Hey guys, today I'm going to make a paracord handle for my spinning rod. The first thing I need to do is decide how I want to put the paracord on here. The handle I got right here is made of foam. I could either put the paracord on top of the foam or I could cut it off. I'm going to cut off the foam for this handle, but if you don't want to cut the foam off your handle, skip to this time code. This might go without saying, but be very careful when you're doing this. Don't want to cut your hand open. So what I'm going to do, the first thing is to cut right here between the plastic and the foam on this end, and do the same thing on this end. Alright, now that I've cut my ends, I'm going to start whittling off the foam here. My big safety tip for today though, be sure to cut away from your body, away from your other hand, because if you're starting to cut back toward your body, that knife could slip, hit your hand, hit another part of your body. You're going to hurt yourself pretty bad. So please do yourself a favor, do me a favor and cut away from your body. Now that I got that first strip off, I can start pulling the foam off like this. And this will really depend on how much adhesive that they use to put this foam on here. I think for this rod, it looks like they use quite a bit. So I'm going to take off what bits I can and then cut the rest off with the knife. Alright, so I got most of the foam off at this point, just whittling off a few extra straggling pieces. You can just whittle away like you would a piece of wood. And there's so much adhesive and coating on here, I'm not really worried about damaging the rod, but just be mindful that you don't want to do that to your rod. Just keep scraping away at it, get it as level as you can. And then down here in the corner between the hilt and this lower part of the rod, sometimes there'll be foam that doesn't that kind of escapes the knife. So what I'll do is just very carefully work through there, just kind of scrape out whatever foam's left on this rod. And I'll do the same thing for the upper side of the lower handle. You got a similar situation down here where some foam kind of escaped the initial cutaway. Now to really make sure this thing's good and smooth, you can take a piece of sandpaper and just kind of work it around the handle here, kind of take off whatever is left of the foam and some of that adhesive, some of that glue that was holding that foam to the rod. Alright, that should be good enough for the lower section. I'm going to repeat that entire process with the upper section. Alright, now I got the upper side done, let's start putting some paracord on this thing. Now it's very possible you can tie paracord onto your rod by using just your hands, but I find it is way easier if you clamp it onto a table. Let me show you how I'm going to do that. Now if I wasn't shooting this for the purposes of a video, I would clamp this rod on the end of my table over here where it's running parallel to the edge of the table. But for the purposes of where I'm shooting the video, I have to do this diagonally. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave myself enough space over here on the end where I can actually make wraps with the paracord. So now I've got my rod in place, I'll bring my clamp in and tighten it down right there. This is just my own psyche or whatever. I don't want to clamp the actual rod because I don't want to crack it or anything. So I'm going with where the reel sits on the handle. To properly tie this on, some of the paracord is going to be trapped against the rod underneath the wraps that are going to be exposed on the outside. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out the core of the paracord right here and then line it up along the rod, and then with I'm going to bring it up to the threads over here on the left hand side, and then I'm going to make a little J hook up here. Doesn't have to be exact here, just getting a rough idea. All right, that should be good. So what I want this thing to do, I'm going to run this thing all the way up to the threads and then back around about, I don't know, about a third of the way back toward the hilt of the rod. So made a mark right there. I'm going to bring in my knife and I'm going to cut this core out. Be careful again, playing with the knife. Cut yourself, done it many times. I don't want you guys to cut yourselves. All right, just like that. And then bring the start pushing that core back up into the paracord. All right, now I'm going to find the part where I cut the core out, and I believe it's right about there. So then I'm going to snugly place this up against the hilt and then begin wrapping this around. I'm going to trap this first wrap right there. That's going to secure it quite nicely. And then with each turn, I'm going to keep a good amount of pressure on this cord so it doesn't come unraveled. I mean, really put a good amount of pressure on this cord, as tight as you can get it. And one thing I'm going to do to keep this paracord in place, this part right here, I'm going to tape it to keep it on top here so I have a nice even run as I wrap this thing down the rod. So place that right there, the piece of tape. And then with the touching turns, I'm going to wrap this paracord down the rod. I want to make sure that I don't leave any gaps between each wrap. And so what I make sure that I don't do that with each wrap, I'll periodically just push the cord back up against the last wrap, just like this. Again, I can't stress this enough. Make sure there are no gaps in the rope and wrap that rope as tight as you possibly can. All right, now at this point, I'm going to take this tape off my paracord. Then I'm going to loop this thing around to where there's going to be a little bit of the paracord exposed on the threads. That'll be important here in a minute. Then I'm going to take the end, the very tag end here, place it up against the threads, and then start trapping that right there to where you have a little bit of a tag end exposed in the middle of the threads, and then continue making these wraps. And I want to make sure that these two sides of the paracord stay together like this to give it a nice even run all the way up the rod. All right, now that I'm down here toward the end, I'm going to make one or two final wraps here. I think that ought to be good. All right, so now I'm going to bring my knife back. Where did I put my knife? All right, so now I'm going to take my knife, place it right here. I want a little bit of a tag end that I can thread through the end of this loop. Try to do this without breaking the rod free from the clamp. It's starting to slide on me a little bit. All right. Cut it all the way through, just like that. I'm going to thread this tag end through this loop right here. And it's going to come unraveled just a little bit, but that's okay. I can still tighten it up a little bit. Push those threads back down. And then pulling that tag end real tight, tighten those cords back up. You can even push them, try twisting them around to get them good and tight like they were just a second ago. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my pliers. I'm going to pull on this tag end that we trapped earlier. I'm going to pull on this, and it's going to pull this loop tight. So grab hold of it right there. You can see I have my hand cover it up, but you can see that that loop is good and tight now, just like that. It's going to pinch the upper tag end right there, which I can still pull on that a little bit to make sure it's tight too. Like that. Give that one last tug. Give this one final tug as well. Nice. That's looking really good. All right, so now I'm going to come in and trim off most of the tag ends here. No, just like that for that one. And then for this one. All right, now I'm going to take a lighter. I'm going to burn these tag ends down just like this. Melt them down just a little bit. Blow on them to cool them off. Then for the second one, I'm going to do the same thing. Slowly melt it down. Don't want to set the whole rope on fire. Now that the lower side's done, I'm going to do the upper side. Well guys, there you have it. Let me know what you thought of this video. If you found it useful and want to check out more videos on my channel, I got a couple options you can pick from right here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.